Welcome to the channel Beginner's Paradise. So today's topic of discussion is silent features of the Indian Constitution. Silent features in the sense that we'll just have a brief overview of the most important pillars of our political setup and the Constitution. Detailed discussions on those important pillars of our Constitution will be done in separate lectures because they'll need a lot of in-depth details. So let's move on and see what exactly are the important pillars of our Constitution. Our Constitution is borrowed from almost every constitution in the world. The inspiration the drafting committee took from every nation that they thought will fit our needs. Moving on, our constitution is also the lengthiest constitution of all written constitution of the world, which means that among the written constitutions of the world, ours is the lengthiest constitution. Now, the thing to note here is it's only about written constitution and not unwritten constitution like in the Great Britain. Also, ours is a very elaborate and detailed provisions in our constitution befitting the country's diverse needs and nature. So our constitution is not a big picture of the needs we need of our situations. It is a detailed and elaborate writing where you can find exactly what you need, and depending upon the situation we are in, we can exactly find provisions which can govern our system and provide the rule of law that the Constitution seeks to promote. Moving on. Now, at the time of adoption of the Constitution, when we adopted it, we had 395 articles and 8 schedules. But since then, after 7.5 decades of inaction of our Constitution, we have almost removed 20 articles and added 90 articles plus 4 schedules. We have 12 schedules at this point of time, discussions on which will be, again, as I said, will be done in a separate chapter because they'll need entire focus. Anyway, moving on. Our Constitution contains not only principles of governance but administrative features too. This is to say that our Constitution does not only say that the system should be governed in a particular manner, it also provides how exactly they are supposed to be executed, and it has also incorporated certain bodies to ensure that administrative functions are done in a particular and transparent manner. As I said before, majority of our Constitution is borrowed from Government of India Act 1935. This was a pre-independence act, and majority of our Constitution, especially the structural part of the Constitution, is taken from in Government of India Act 1935. But there are certain provisions such as fundamental rights and DPSP have been borrowed from American and Irish constitutions respectively. Respectively, in the sense fundamental rights are taken from American Constitution, and DPSP as in Directive Principles of State Policies. It's a simple directive for states to give them an outline of their policy making, that these things should be incorporated and looked into when they make a policy. That's DPSP. We'll go into it in detail in a separate lecture. So DPSP is being taken from which nation? IRL, Irish Constitution. The inspiration is from Irish Constitution. The other provisions have also been sourced from the Constitution of Canada, Australia, Germany, and USSR. We will have a separate discussion on what provisions we have taken from which country. Moving on. Indian Constitution is a blend of rigidity and flexibility. Rigidity in the sense that it's not very easy for us to amend the Constitution, although it is possible. So you talk about American Constitution, it's very difficult, and you have to have very elaborate and special provisions to uh, amend the Constitution of America, which is not the case in India. It can be amended as and when the Parliament think the need arises. At the same time, our Constitution is not so flexible that at the whims and fancies of the legislature they can be amended, and because they'll have to adhere to the basic structures of the Constitution. Basic structure of the Constitution has been arrived at by Supreme Court in Keshwal and the Bharti case. We'll again have a separate and detailed discussion about Keshwal and Bharti case, because that is perhaps the most important amendment and judgment of the Supreme Court as far as the Constitution of this country is concerned. So, as I said, ours is not as tough to amend as an American Constitution, but it's not as easy to amend as in the British Constitution, right? So we are a blend of rigidity and flexibility. We can amend our Constitution, but considering that we do not violate the basic structures of the Constitution. Again, moving on. Constitution provides a federal structure with unitary bias. This is a unique thing. Not so unique because it has already been inspired by the Canadian Constitution. It's taken from Canada. This federal structure with unitary bias, which means that we are a federal setup of states, but union has certainly a bit more power than states, individual states that you can call Rajasthan or MP or in Maharashtra, or any particular state has relatively a bit less freedom than the center. It contains feature of federation, such as a written constitution. Like, we do have features which says that we are a federal structure, like written constitution. The judiciary is independent, like we have bicameralism. Bicameralism means that there is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, that upper house and lower house and upper house. Upper house is Rajya Sabha, lower house is Lok Sabha. Alright, so these things are main features of federal structure. We do have all of this, but still we are not a complete federal state like United States of America. We are a federal setup like Canada, where the power slightly tilts with the center. Residuary power is with the center. So any law that center makes will always have more power than a law made by the states. Yet the Constitution paves way for a strong center by providing a single citizenship. Again, we have a single citizenship. Like in America, you have dual citizenship. You are a citizen of America and you can still be a citizen of California or Mississippi. But in India, you are a citizen of India and not of Kerala or Bihar or Punjab, right? So we have single citizenship, which makes it unitary biased. The state governor's appointment by center. Governor plays a very important and vital role in center-state relations. So their appointment is not done by election or certain bodies, right? They are simply appointed by center and can be called, in fact, are called the agents of the center. So they, to a large extent, you can say they work for the center. So it gives center a bit more clutch on the power that is shared between center and the state. Center in this sense can have some say in the functioning, administrative and legislative functioning of the state. These things make our country federal but with unitary bias. Moving on, Constitution provides for parliamentary form of government. Ours is a parliamentary form of government. What does parliamentary form of government means? It simply means that ours, we cooperate and coordinate between legislator and executive, right? If we have presidential form of government, the legislature and executive will be completely separate. But parliamentary forms of government, the legislature and executive are not separate, right? Like Mike Pompeo of United States of America is the Secretary of State, but he may or may not be elected at all, right? But in India, in order to be an external affairs minister or minister of state for external affairs, you'll have to be elected. That's exactly what we mean by cooperation and coordination between legislature and executive, because they are not completely separate as in the presidential form of government. Now we also have featured some of the parliamentary forms of government. Like parliamentary form of government, some features are majority party rule, like the majority party is going to rule. There are no proportional representation, means the amount of vote you got and you'll get to represent that many people. No. If you win 51% of vote or a majority number of vote, you are going to rule and you are going to govern the nation, right? That's majority party rule. Ministers in the legislature. As I said, ministers are the legislatures in our system. Like in America, United States of America, you can be a minister or an elected Senate member, but you may not have an exact say in the policy making. That can be done by executives as well, but that is not the case in India, right? The Prime Minister is the leader in parliamentary system of India, while in the United States, the President is nominated through a vertical setup. We'll discuss that in presidential form of government in later sections. We'll tell you how exactly the President of the United States of America is elected. So our lower house again is Lok Sabha, can be dissolved, and it has been dissolved many a times, right? Which is not the case with the presidential form of government in the United States of America. No house is ever dissolved. Only the president elects every 4 years, right? So that's how we are different from presidential form of government. Moving on. Intertwining of parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy. When a parliamentary setup is created, the supreme is the lawmakers of the nation, the elected representatives who have won the election through a universal adult franchise are the supreme governors of the nation. They are the lawmakers. They decide how this country function, what laws are there. All right. So our country is parliamentary sovereign, which means the parliament is ahead of everyone when it comes to power and superiority. But here is a catch. Our constitution also paves way for judicial supremacy. Judicial supremacy in the sense that parliamentary, although sovereign in its own sphere, cannot violate the basic structures of the constitution, because if it does so, the Supreme Court is well within its constitutional rights and obligation to cross the laws made by Parliament that violates the basic structure of the constitution, and call it null and void. And that's exactly where the Supreme Court can check the absolute power of the elected representative, right? So it's a unique combination of parliamentary sovereignty and judicial supremacy. All right, so it's a great provision and very unique provision in our constitution, where parliamentary sovereignty is there, but it can be checked by judicial supremacy through basic structures of doctrine. Again, constitution provides for an integrated judiciary. So ours is an integrated judiciary. Again, I'll compare it with the United States of America. Like a state of Florida will have a separate high court, right, which will have nothing to do with the apex court of United States of America.
the functioning of Florida and the judicial functioning of the Florida will be entirely taken up by the High Court of Florida. While in India that's not the case. Ours is a integrated judiciary, which means that Supreme Court, and below them there are high courts, and below them there are a hierarchy of lower courts. Means if suppose you have a case in high court and you think that it goes against your rights, you can move to Supreme Court. While that's not the case in America. Their decision, a high court's decision, final, and you cannot move Supreme Court. So jurisdiction of apex court in United States of America is not going to go through states. While in India, the jurisdiction of Supreme Court is over all of Indian territory, and it surpasses High Court's supremacy and sovereignty in many cases. Right? So ours is an integrated judiciary. They enforce both central and state laws. Thanks for watching the video. Further continuation of the chapter is done in part 2, so stay tuned.